Welcome back to RGR Football. Glad you guys are here. And while you're not watching live, we're recording this live. And I'm lucky enough to get Dan Harms back from Arrowhead. Guys, how are you, Dan?
And how you doing?
Oh, it's still the same old week.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. I'm calmer than I was. Calmer than you are, anyway.
Well, I'm still like, you can still feel it bunched up a little bit, but I mean, for the most part, I'm okay.
Well, it comes down to, I feel like whatever we do, whatever they did, and Steve Spagnuolo talked about it on Friday a little bit, that he just kind of got thinking that they were going to have to pass more. Now, he didn't say it directly, but he felt like Andy Reid was going to have more of a lead. And so that brings me back to what we were talking about before we clicked go. What is it? Why do the Titans, no matter who the coach is or whatever, why do they have this thing for Andy Reid?
I wish I could tell you, but for some reason, when it comes to the Titans, they can't win. And it's funny because I was saying before the game, I just have this feeling that something weird is going to happen. And the Chiefs should have had probably at least a 21-point lead. And then some weird stuff started happening, drops, penalties, and the game gets close at the end. But, you're like, we're probably still going to win this game. Missed field goal, botch snaps. It's just
much,
typical.
Right?
Yeah.
It gets to that point and it's all overload. And they just can't recover. I'm baffled by some of the decision making, and we're not going to kick a dead horse forever, but we do have to make sure that what they see going forward is not what they saw last week against the Titans. Now, this is a different Chargers team that's coming at them in Mexico City, but there are certain elements of it that are still the same. They still want to rush Melvin Gordon. He's finally hitting his kind of stride for the season, and they're going to combine zone. They're going to combine man. They're going to try to attack them however they can. I did some in my film review. What have you seen to this point?
They still, they still love their cover 3 zone. It's predominantly what I've seen on film anyway. I see it a lot with their single highs, deep safety, and the 2 guys that play on the outside. And the Chiefs can really attack that. They've been zone beaters all year, and especially with the speed they have, it can really open up the intermediate part of the field for just about anybody. You could have Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill on the outside, stretch those corners and safeties, and really attack them underneath in all of the areas that open up. And they did it last year, and I expect them to do the same thing this year, especially with Damian Williams out of the backfield.
Yeah, I think that gives them some more options, especially the big question for me is how's the offensive line going to hold up? Clearly, I think that they can attack them. Yeah. I'd like to see Kelsey get a big game under his belt, to tell you the truth. But when they're able to do that, looks like there could be LDT, looks like there could be Fisher. We probably won't know until game time. So by the time you guys are seeing this, we probably still don't have a solid answer. But let's talk offensive line for a minute before we go back to flipping it about Melvin Gordon, about what they're going to do run scheme-wise. What's your optimal offensive line right now, given everybody who could be healthy is?
Could be healthy. Well, I still have my impartialness to a guy who hasn't even really played this season at Allegretti at center. But assuming that they're not even going to think about that, they'll just stick with Ryder, which, I mean, okay, it is what it is at this point. But I love having a healthy fish. I think Wisniewski's best at left guard, probably best at left guard with Ryder. And then really right now it's pick your poison at right guard. It could be Wiley, it could be LTT. They're playing almost at the exact same level, in my opinion. LDT looks a little bit worse for wear. It just doesn't look like he's been right after his injury a little bit. And I think that Wiley at his peak last year is better than LDT has been this year. But like I said, it's really a coin flip. So, and then you obviously have Schwartz at right tackle, who's never going to miss another snap if he can help it.
Right. I feel bad for him. I'm surprised he went out that long. But, I completely agree with you about Wiz, and I think we're only on opposite sides about that Wiley versus LDT thing, because you're probably right. At peaks, I think I would agree with you. But over the course of it, like the down-to-down consistency, I don't see out of Wiley. It makes me nervous, to tell you the truth. And that's why I'm still leaning towards LDT, and I guess we'll just see who works best with Schwartz. I think so. Well, that's what it comes down to.
No, I agree. LDT's got the most reps with him, I would assume, based off of everything that we've seen. Wiley had just the year last year, But if it comes down to continuity, then it's probably going to be LDT, especially because with an offensive line, you need that going into the playoffs, and without it, you're really not going to be able to stop anybody. Communication will be all screwed up, and you really want that in the playoffs.
Well, the other thing that I don't expect is we can talk about the altitude a little bit if you want. I know we're probably on opposite sides of that as well, just from my experience, and it is what it is. But I don't think the altitude is going to affect whether guys drop balls or not, and I don't think we're going to see as much from Sammy and from Tyreek. I mean, this has got to be a bounce-back game for the offense, even though the defense is probably the one that's got more pressure on them.
Oh, I agree. This is a full team bounce-back because they made mistakes at all three levels, and I know fans are really upset, but these are professional athletes, and if you think that they're not more upset about what went on in that game than you are, then you've really got another thing coming. They're not happy about the way they played, the way they executed down the stretch. That should have been an easy win for them, and they found a way to fumble it away. There's no way they're going to be happy about that. So I do expect to see some fire in all of them playing on Monday night in primetime against the division opponent.
I certainly hope so, because I agree with you. It's hard getting used to, and I have to. I'm not trying to stick up for him unbeknownstly. Frank Clark deserves a little bit of recognition for what he's been dealing with, but he just doesn't seem to be a guy that is that fire, at least when we hear from him in the press. He seems very controlled. He seems very measured in what he says in front of cameras. So I'm not going to argue that that's not a terrible thing, but I do want to see some fire from him. Supposedly, if he's feeling better and that pinch nerve is starting to diminish and he can get feeling in his fingers again, that should definitely help him. But is he a guy that can bounce back against this particular Chargers game?
Well, it's really going to mostly it's going to depend on how he feels, because even against lesser competition in this season, he just hasn't really done enough to warrant him being one of the best players on this defense. And it's like you said, it's come down to how he's felt this year. But the Chargers are going to be without their two starting tackles, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And if that doesn't at least help your mentality going in as an edge defender, I don't know what's going to. You're not feeling great. But even if you're a little bit better than you have been this season and you're going up against some backups, that really has to help, especially against a statue at quarterback in Phillip Rivers who cannot move around in the pocket. You've got some opportunities to really get after the quarterback and get after this Chargers offense.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to what they can do on the interior as well, because we know that they're going to be diminished without Agba, and that rotation is going to change a little bit. But Feeney's having a pretty unspectacular year as well, and so that rotation that I thought would be a weakness inside at the 1 to 3 tech, might even see Tonto Passanio in there, who's made a living this year getting penetration. I feel like this is an option for him to line up on that left side and really attack.
Oh, I agree. He's had some really impressive snaps, and I think that offensive linemen have kind of really underappreciated his speed, because he's got such a quick. He's not obviously D Ford fast off the snap, but he's very quick. He's deceivingly quick in some for his size. So it's really helped him get early penetration, and then especially we saw the sack against Aaron Rodgers, I believe it was, where he just kind of ran into him, and he didn't really expect him to just kind of creep towards him. He used that stride of his, and he just gets there very quickly. So the the down linemen are really going to have to step up in order to allow the linebackers to get to Melvin Gordon in this run game. They got to open holes, and they got to make it easy for them to see where Melvin Gordon's coming, because the Titans, they wore them down. They were more physical all game. They have a very big offensive line, and they wanted to establish that they were going to make this difficult for the Chiefs up front. And they did that, and it showed with Derrick Henry just running wild against them. So they really have to have this game in their minds going forward, that they can't just expect to have a lead. You got to play like you want it all game.
Well, and if anybody saw the mic'd up for Taylor Lewan, it was clearly that's exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to dominate. They wanted to establish themselves. The Chargers are going to be a little bit different, because I don't think they have the horses to really establish that kind of dominance. But the same thing feels to be the same kind of process that they have to go through. They have to stop that. And I feel like maybe what could have been a very easy decision to play Pinnell last week, which should have been, because you knew or you should have known if you're Steve Spagnuolo, that they're going to run first. They're not going to be in 3 wideouts. They're not going to be passing down the field because they don't do that as well. This Chargers team is a different scenario. And while I think that Saunders should have played a lot more, Ragland should have played a lot more, obviously Pennell should have been out there last week, now it becomes more of a balancing act about how much you're going to run all of those guys. And I know they kept Ivy on the field because they felt in a pinch that he could rush out of the dime. What do you think they should do this week, seeing that the Chargers is a more well-rounded offense?
Well, I think that we're going to probably see Chris Jones more at defensive end. I think he actually wants to play a little more too. He looked really good against the Vikings, and obviously stature-wise, he looks more like a defensive end. And you can have Noddy in there with Saunders, and that lineup against the Vikings that really worked well with Clark, Jones, Noddy, and Saunders. They seem to control the point of attack, line of scrimmage more often than we've seen in the past from this defensive line. And then as soon as you do that, then you can start to rotate some guys in, keep everyone healthy. And that was something that we didn't really see against the Titans. The rotation was there, but they were on the field so much that everyone was tired. So I as well thought that Ragland should have played more, even though they didn't necessarily stop the run as well with him on the field. But he gives you the best option as a run-stopping linebacker to at least attempt to stop it. And right. You're sitting in there playing nickel, and you've got Ben Neiman out on the field more. He's not that downhill running, stop point of attack linebacker that Ragland is. So I don't think that the Chargers are going to be able to do what the Titans did because their offensive line is so hurt, like you said. So keeping everyone fresh up front and getting off the field on third downs and not letting a quarterback run for 8 yards and 2 yards after contact is really going to be important.
Yeah. And in my game plan video for last Friday, I put out and showed a couple of things that Gordon can do. And I do feel that they're going to attack in both a zone scheme and a man scheme. And that comes back to a little more pressure on Steve Spagnuolo to have Ragland. And honestly, as I track through the data, I'm probably going to put this out next week. I need another game or so. But it's not just Ragland. It's Ragland and Saunders with Noddy. That triangle seems to be what really worked the last couple of weeks against the run. You got to do that on first down so you can get ahead in the situation, but then you got to switch it out. And I think that's what he's most fearful of, is being caught out of position with the wrong personnel.
Well, I mean, he was caught out of position with the right personnel and last week. So, I mean, you got to start. We all wanted people to make adjustments, and this time I thought they got a little bit too ahead of themselves with the Titans, and they thought about the game plan a little too much. Like they thought the Titans were going to come out and spread them out instead of running the ball. They don't have the athletes to beat you in that scenario. The Chargers do if they get a lead, or even from behind, they can throw the ball around with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, even though Phillip Rivers is really kind of a shell of himself at this point in his career. He doesn't have that same arm velocity. He kind of floats balls a little bit more, so defenses have time to break on them a little easier. But they can still hang points, and they can get places in a hurry, especially with Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon out of the backfield. So it's good, like you said, it's going to be important that they are balanced, but that they don't second-guess themselves and try and get too cute with their personnel decisions. Just do what you do well, and then make your decisions in-game based off what's happening, not what you think is going to happen.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And they proved that they can use those bigger receivers last year, that last game against them. So I think that's something to guard against. But that whole thing, like you said, the velocity change for Rivers tells me that there's more opportunity this season to play zone and break on passes because they may be underthrown or they just might not get there as quickly as you expect. So I want to see more mixed zone. You said a lot of 3 from what you saw last week. Mm-hmm. I know I've seen them play 4. I want to try to get back to some of that so they have more opportunities to see the ball coming and make breaks.
Yeah, I mean, I was specifically talking about the Chargers defense, but yeah, we saw it last year too. Even in the game that they lost, they had a couple picks. They got to Rivers early, and he was forced to he really wasn't really forced to throw it up, but he did throw it up, and Nelson got that pick. And so it's going to be, I know that the game plan going in is going to be try to keep it calm because this could be a game that they very easily could take over and win quite convincingly. But it is the Chargers. They've won a bunch of games against the Chargers, but this last one was close. And I think losing the way that they did last year might also be still fresh in their minds, especially because on offense they didn't really execute in the second half the way that we want to see down the stretch. And I know that everyone wants to talk about keeping Patrick Mahomes and throwing him for 400 plus and putting up 40 points, but realistically speaking, this defense can stop the Chargers offense from scoring 30 plus points. The Titans should have scored 35 or 28 with the fumble. So I do think this is all going to be fresh in their minds. And even though that loss hurts against the Titans, it really might help the entire team get their mindset straight for this home stretch, this stretch run here.
Right. And that's a good segue into what I'm thinking longer term. You get the bye, and then you got to talk Patriots. And then you got to take a look at, can this team do enough, particularly on defense, but as a whole, like you said, to get in position, to get to the AFC Championship, win it, and actually get to that Super Bowl still. It's been an up and down season. How do you feel about it right now?
I'm still confident in this team. It's not, these things that are happening are mental lapses, and that speaks a lot to the players themselves, not so much coaching, because we've seen both offense, defense, and special teams at highest levels. And at the highest level of all of them, they are the best team in the NFL. The defense gets pressure on the quarterback. They can stop the run against one of the better running backs in the NFL in Dalvin Cook and one of the best offensive lines from the Minnesota Vikings. So it feels like they just try to tinker a little bit too much. And we saw it with the Andy Reid, the 3rd and 2, with having Blake Bell as your only offensive
option.
That's just too cute. That's assuming that the defense is going to forget about tight end screens that have been killing them all game. And so it's just about really getting back to basics, knowing what you do well, and trusting your players to make the right decisions. And Patrick Mahomes on 3rd and 2 with other options is going to get 2 yards. You don't need these cute little screens to try to confuse the defense. He's going to get 2 yards. So just trust in your players. And like I said, I've still got the absolute most faith in them, because I've seen them. We've all seen them at their highest levels, and that is the best team in football.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Trust in a player kind of hit a hiccup last week, and I'm really interested to see what happens in Mexico City. What's going on with LaShawn? Is it the fumble thing? I think it's a smoke screen resting him, but what's your take?
I mean, if we watched the first couple of touches he had against the Vikings, he didn't look that great. He couldn't make guys miss in space. He was having trouble, when he caught the ball with 5 or 6 yards of separation between the defender, he couldn't stop in enough time to get around him, and he gets tackled. So I'm wondering if it's more of an injury thing, if he's feeling a little dinged up, and they do want him for that, the playoff run. Because if this running back room is more multiple with Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy and Darrell Williams, I think that they're very good. They can use all of them the way you want to use them, with Williams in this, Damian in the passing game, maybe LaShawn more with the run game. But so I buy that he needs a little bit of rest, especially getting him into the bye. Maybe they're trying to get him a few weeks total to get back to health, which I could totally see. But he did not look right against the Vikings, and then Damian came in and he looked a little bit better, obviously with some vision issues, but
as per usual. So hey,
yeah,
that's the way that it works. So bottom line, how do you feel about this game? What do you think is going to happen?
I'm gonna try to keep myself level-headed, because I know that the Chiefs can really blow this game out of the water, but there's different factors with the altitude and whether it really affects them or not. I don't have a clue, because I'm not an expert in that kind of thing. I'm not a professional athlete, and all of them will have different areas which affects them or where it doesn't affect them. I really think that the defense is going to come out and they're just going to attack like they did against the Broncos. They have a statue at quarterback, not a very good offensive line. They can really do some things and blitz Phillip Rivers, make him uncomfortable, throw some Hail Marys up there, and then they're going to get a few picks off of him. And Patrick Mahomes is just going to light up this defense. The Chargers, especially without Derwin James, who I absolutely love as a player, and I feel for him for missing missing these games, but without him, they are a very different back end, and they don't have the speed and the athleticism to keep up with McCole, Sammy, and Tyreek. So it's just, I want to say it's a blowout, but I think they win by at least a touchdown.
Okay, hey, that's fair. I'll take a win and a win and a win. So it is what it is. But folks, make sure you're checking all of Dan's work over at Arrowhead, guys. You can see his film breakdowns, and make sure the Twitter handle, I can never remember it correctly, so you got to tell folks.
I'm at D_Harms19.
I always say 91 for some reason. Never mind. Anyway, thanks for your time today, dude.
Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
All right. And folks, we'll be back. We'll have more for you. I'll do the post-game live and all that kind of good business. So we'll talk to you then.